drugs, antibiotics or other antimicrobials? Yes, moderator, pets, whatever you call them, we define animals as anything other than human. So when you look at even beasts, they are animals. Fish are animals? Yes. And we have to follow people with that. Therefore, this is where we have to be very careful with what we use in the environment at any particular moment. And now, I want to portray this picture. You've talked of pets. I think you heard that during the COVID times, there are pets that got COVID from owners. There's this transmission between humans and animals. Not only pets, actually, even food animals. 60–70% of the diseases that affect humans do suffer. And the same pathogens that we encounter as humans are in these animals. Therefore, the same antibiotics, that's the preparations that are different because of what Professor said. So, an animal will be, some of the animals are 500 kilos. So they will not get the same dosage as me, who weighs 72 kilos. So it's just the dosage that's different and maybe also the concentration. But they get the same medications that we have, the preparations that are the same as those from humans. Now, if you have this sharing of these pathogens, anything that is upset in the animal kingdom can be transmitted to the humans. So then we need to start working from that perspective. That if we are getting resistance in the animal kingdom, and a lot of us here have beef, I know Fridays we like to buy something, that if not taken care of, is going to harm our human.
Thank you so much, and that is my question. We are going to ask you whether antibiotics are used in these animals, but you answered that question very well. And you have mentioned that it is possible to get drug-resistant organisms infecting our animals, and therefore that will pass on to us. I wanted to know, they say that, so when you give antibiotics, I know in my encounter in this discussions, that when you give antibiotics to an animal, they remain in the body for a while, and so you shouldn't eat the animal or any of the products for some time. It's what they call the withdrawal period. So how do you know when to take the milk or not, when to eat the meat or not? How do we make sure that these things are safe? What advice do you have for us?
Thanks, Moderator. There are a number of ways that we can ensure that this is done correctly. One of them is that we should ensure that animals are treated by well-trained personnel. They should give the guidelines. The issue of self-prescription by farmers, by pet owners, and all that is a dangerous phenomenon that we need to really curtail as much as we can. Therefore, we need to have a specialist advice at all times, stick to what they've given us and what they've told us to do. It's unfortunate that we cannot by ourselves know whether this animal was treated yesterday and the milk there is not safe, because the practices will be different from one person to another. Therefore, it is important that we follow through the guidelines, and also we put in place systems. We have systems to try to detect what is going on, what we call residue monitoring around the country, of the program of government to do residue monitoring for meat products like milk, so that we can assess what is being channeled out for human consumption out there. Because we realize from the residue aspect of it, we might also promote resistance in humans and in the environment for that matter. Because as you said, these drugs remain in the body of these people. If I consume milk that has an antibiotic, it means that basically I'm transferring antibiotics to myself indirectly, and that is quite not desirable at all.
Thank you so much. Yesterday during the press brief, I don't know if it was you CT scanner. But there was the issue about antibiotics or other drugs ending up in our environment. And that's why in terms of drug resistance, multiple resistance, we're talking about human health and the environment. So how does this actually happen? How the antibiotics or the other drugs end up in the
Thank you very much. As you know, the professor explained that antimicrobials and antibiotics, whatever we can call them, they are chemicals. And therefore, when they're taken into the animal or the human being for that matter, it is not that the breakdown will happen exclusively to completely break down the antimicrobial to the basic makeup product. Some of them will be excreted in urine, in the fecal matter, and therefore those antimicrobials contribute to environmental pollution. We have manure that people now, it's very common for people to use manure from chickens. And if that manure could have been, these chickens could have been treated with antimicrobials, they're being harmed with that manure is being thrown into the fields for fertilization. That manure is indirectly being spreading antimicrobial in the environment. That manure can also flow into water basins. It means that our fish in the rivers and other water bodies are being exposed to antimicrobials slowly but gradually. And there's profit, there's true. No organism would want to die. They will fight to the very last strength. And for them, the best fight is to try and elude anything that is hampering their development. We also have, if we are not careful at it, we would have also industries that produce antimicrobials, drugs, or antimicrobial-like products. When they discharge their residues, they might discharge into the environment. These get washed into water bodies, sewer systems, and everywhere. And eventually, this will end up polluting the environment. So you can see it's really a cycle. It is something that you cannot exclude the environment, you cannot exclude the animal health, you cannot exclude human health. We are in this matter together as a society.
Thank you so much, Dr. Muka, for those important words. So would you say that, as we said in the human sector, that we also can share our antimicrobials or our drugs among our animals, and in times when the cost is quite high and they're telling you to get so many packets of tetra something, and due to so many things, and doctors don't have enough money, and you can just increase the amount of water diluting that antibiotic in and have all my animals have access to it. I mean, they're just
No, you can't do that. Unfortunately, the basic principle that applies in humans applies in animals. As I said, they are doses. There are routes of administration. There's a time under which the antimicrobial can work in the animal that is prescribed. So that's why we say leave it to the specialists and take their word for it and do as they say. You heard I said this so-called self-prescription. We now have what we call Facebook doctors. So really, we really have to be there with the specialists, and it's really a point of caution to, I think, that I can give in this forum that please let's stick to trained people to give us directives on how to prescribe private medicine that it's cheaper to prevent us from use biosecurity that is important for eco production. Use vaccines to prevent diseases, because once the animals are vaccinated, they will not succumb to disease that will compel you to use antibiotics.
Thank you, Dr. Muka. I certainly have a message on my WhatsApp farmers groups where we post pictures of our animals. Look at my chicken, look at the eyes, and what can I do for that? There are so many prescriptions shared there. So definitely that's important information to share, isn't it? Now the people who regulate the way we use medicine, ZAMRA, DG's Nyanda, it's really exciting to have you here as well. And I know that you are a key stakeholder in this journey of managing drug resistance within our country, and so on. We know that, we all know, it's not a secret anymore, that you can get prescribed drugs anywhere. Anybody can access them as long as you may know the name. Sometimes even just the color of the medicine. Somebody directly age, black, and so on, and the pharmacist or the dispenser will give you the medicine. How does this contribute to drug resistance? It's a good practice.
Thank you so much, Loretta. I'll basically identify some issues that are to do with the DG here. The information that has come out is quite clear, and we touch on some of the things that I'm talking about. Indeed, yes, it's true. We have situations where some of these regulated outlets will regulated dispensing medicines without prescription, which is contrary to the medicines and allies. It's an offense. So the reason why it's created as an offense for certain medicines or all prescription medicines dispensed with a prescription and then dispensed without prescription because of the danger that it poses. There are mechanisms that are put in place to ensure that members of the public are protected. So as you know that ZAMRA has got a mandate to protect all humans and animals. So because of that interlinkage, there has to be a concerted effort. So there is what we are calling one health approach. So maybe just guidance or advice to members of the public that you need to seek medical attention from facilities that are recognized. In facilities that are recognized, you find qualified personnel, the doctors, dental surgeons, veterinary surgeons, and so forth. And when you go to these registered pharmacists, of course, you find pharmacists, but just the way to health practitioners in general. So we need to be ethical the way we are conducting ourselves as we are commemorating this week of antimicrobial. We should be cognizant that we are contributing to the problem of drug resistance. That's far as antibiotics are concerned. So that's what I would carry. But as ZAMRA, we are concerned, and we are taking this issue seriously, especially for facilities that are regulated by us, even those that are not regulated by us, to see to it that proper things are done. I think of late you could have been hearing some of the activities that the authority has been taking in terms of killing those that are selling medicines without proper authorization from the authority, and will be prosecuted. However, the problem is big in terms of unregulated channels of distribution of these medicines.
Thank you, Dr. That's very, very important, and I think the message is clear and straightforward, and that should be propagated more in the community. We all have to take responsibility and make sure that we are not part of the unregulated drug procedures. Just to say, I know this is scientific, but I think it was important. At some point, we always talk about antibiotics, and then there's antimicrobials. There are different microbials and antibiotics, so the other way around, or is it the same?
Okay, thank you so much for that question. The microbials, there is a difference. Although the other one is bigger, it's like a big family where you also find antibiotics. But in terms of the job that they do when it comes to infection, it's a similar concept. Basically, they are there to kill germs that are existing. So you have various types of germs that would affect humans, affect plants, animals, and so forth. It has been stated
by the two presenters on the matters of antimicrobials and so forth. So antibiotics basically are used where you've got bacteria that affects humans, that affects animals, that affects plants. Whereas for antimicrobial, it's a general term where you also find antibiotics mentioned in there. So they may include other conditions. For example, for parasites, they will fall under antimicrobials. When you talk of viruses and so forth, drugs that act in that regard fall under antibiotics. So there is a difference, except that the other one is apparent, whereas an antibiotic is a subset of the antibiotic. But functionally, they operate the same in order to kill the germs.
Thank you so much, Christina. So we know that these drugs that are dispensed among us human beings have caused, or some of them have become, the organisms are resistant to their, what they're supposed to be doing, which is they're stopping their fitness, their growth, and so on. And I know that there are some common drugs that we know of. I think I've heard about HIV, I'm not sure. Are there some
Okay, thank you so much for that. I think in general, you'll find that drugs are not properly used, either for misuse or irrational use and so forth. May lead to resistance, where the microorganism does not become susceptible to the effects of the medicines that are being taken. So we have, for example, HIV in terms of the virus. There have been some changes in terms of which some of the changes may have been necessitated due to resistance. As I think it was discussed at some point, when we continuously use some of these drugs, naturally with time we find that the viruses or the germs, they've sort of changed their form in order to safeguard themselves. Because they say that in safety, something like that. So it's a similar thing where they change their form in order to avoid being killed by these agents, which we call antimicrobials or antibiotics. Then we have anti-TBs. Over time, there are certain basic TB drugs that we used to use, but if you look at the current situation, it's a different story of the versions of drugs have actually changed from what we used to use now because of issues of resistance. There might have heard of what they call multi-drug resistance. Stemming from there, it's a huge problem, especially when it comes to TBs. Maybe the problem is they're taken over time. The microorganism itself is a bit complicated in the way it affects the body. And then we have quite a number that are also used to treat urinary tract infection, upper respiratory infections, and what we call antiprotozoa. Commonly known, some of them are antimalarials or managing malaria. We also have a drug called chloroquine. Sure, you know it. We no longer use it for malaria specifically, but it's also licensed to be used in other conditions other than malaria. But for malaria specifically, because of that resistance that developed, these drugs are no longer used. When it comes to sexually transmitted diseases, I think it must have been either this week or last week, early this week, when I was listening virtually to a presentation where they were showing some levels of resistance when it comes to some sexually transmitted diseases. And it frightened me because many young people are going around without proper precautions to safeguard themselves as far as these diseases are concerned. Once they get infected, they don't go to the right places to go and seek protection. They'll probably go to these legal drugstores or traditional healers and so forth. Get education that will not be able to treat. So others, because they don't say intake black and red capsule. That was it's a penicillin, giving doxycycline. So those drugs no longer work for most of these sexually transmitted diseases. So it would be proper if someone visited a recognized facility where they can see qualified professionals to look at them and prescribe medicines that in the protocol or have been recognized by the government to be treated to be used in the treatment of these infections.
Thank you so much. My last question to you, Ms. Nyanda. Sometimes maybe somebody dies, but you still have medicine with you, or maybe they just finish the prescription and you use medicine and they're all you put more than enough and maybe they've expired. I know I've read elsewhere about very complicated ways of disposing of these medicines, and I know those don't exist here. I normally just flush them down the toilet, but I was reading somewhere that is not a good practice. So, as regulators of medicine, how they utilize this, how do you advise the disposal of expired medicines or medicines not in use?
So thank you. That's a very important question. I think most of us, I don't know if I can ask how they know how to get rid of medicines that you are keeping in your homes, including antibiotics. I can see some of you are shaking your heads. It is an indication that you don't know how these are supposed to be managed, post-disposal. As earlier indicated that these medicines, specifically when you're talking about antimicrobials or antibiotics, they affect the human being. They're used as well, but they affect the human beings from what has been described to the animals and the plants, including the environment in general. So you're not supposed to dispose of these anyhow without following certain procedures. There are people that are mandated to ensure that medicines are properly disposed. Because there are quite a number of methods that are used. So ZAMPRA has got that responsibility, but overall responsibility in terms of disposal of anything lies with Zambia. So we work hand in hand. So at a household level, how you should handle this is that once you accumulate some of these medicines, or somebody dies, or you had too much in terms of what you have prescribed and so forth, somebody has spent. What remains, what I would advise you is to take to the nearest health facility or pharmacy within your location. Those people know how these medicines are supposed to be. So they'll put them together at a point when it comes to disposal. They will write to the authorities, including ZEMA, that they wish to dispose these drugs that are manipulated, either they become obsolete or they've expired and so forth. So we take it up from there. There are some methods that are recommended for disposal, which you shouldn't try at home. Shouldn't try at home. You watch Restream, I'm sure they say, don't try this at home. So in a similar way for drugs, we normally use a method called decantation. For certain liquid medication, we dilute and then drain in the sewer line. But this is after certain treatment has been done. You don't just drain. Okay? Then it won't be able to impact on the environment. Then there's also what we call incineration, burning of medicines. You don't burn open air. I think if you do that, it's against some of the legislation that we have that prohibits burning of materials in open environment because of the impact that it has. So we use incinerators at very, very high temperatures where nothing remains. Even if smoke comes out, you won't have an effect in terms of the chemicals that are coming out from them. The other one, we call it encapsulation. This is where we remove the drug from packaging material, mix it with lime, certain proportions, and then you can put it in a container or just with some materials. Then you bury at a certain level, maybe 5 meters going downwards, somewhere there. So all those are some of the methods that used when it comes to handling of medicines as far as disposal is concerned. So at household level, you need to ensure that you go to the nearest pharmacy, nearest health facility, and give them your medical. Organic examiner, there would be need for us to do a little bit more to sensitize members of the public. So from your indication here, it shows that we're not aware, including
I always just flash them down the toilet.
So I'm one of those companies where medicines are donated in the house, so I take exam, we hand over and say, we dispose of this. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So that brings me to the end of the guided conversation with our experts. But I think it's important that we give you space to ask a question and clarify the information that has been shared with us today. And before we open to the question and answer session, I'd like us to give our experts a big hand for that presentation. So, by show of hands, please, Brad, come close to the front, ask your question, indicate where you're coming from, the name of course, and ask your question, please. Yes, Anna, to the beginning.
Thank you. I'm Monica Baby-Kalembo. I'm from the I need clarity on we are being told that antimicrobial resistance is usually as a result of overuse and abuse of drugs and all. So I'm a little concerned. Are our friends on ART safe because they use these drugs for a longer period of time? Are they safe? I just want you to clarify or yeah, for that.
Okay, we'll take another 2 questions.
Good morning. My name is Zuri. Peter Becker, Media House. I don't know, I have questions for everyone here. But anyway, anybody can be able to pick them up. But my first question, I think from the time that we started with this awareness, I've been following up and looking at some of the medicines that we've talked about, taking note of them, taking note of over 7 of the medications that we mentioned, including penicillin, Fagel, and others. So I just wanted to find out how much more do we have that have developed resistance? And also, what are we doing in order to ensure that the community is aware of such kind of information? Of course, not just looking at the media disseminating information, but what kind of programs are we having in the community so that they are fully aware of the use of drugs? There was something that came out yesterday when I was attending the briefing by the Ministry of Health, where even the director here expressed concern with how the regulation is going around when it comes to regulating the pharmacies that are administering these drugs. Are we having challenges in terms of the manpower that can actually curb such kind of problems that we're having, where people continue selling medications that are not even prescribed? And then to Dr. Muka, you mentioned something to do with ensuring that people that keep pet animals ensure that they consider, they actually go to the specialists to help their animals. And how much more or how many do we have in terms of the veterinary in the department, in your department? And is that enough for the people to actually consult with them when needed? Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we'll start with that set of questions first, and then we'll get the next round. We can start.
Sure. Thank you, Monica. I think you asked an incredibly important question. That's for our people who are on antiretroviral therapy. So let's establish it. Firstly, HIV, as we know it, when you put the patient on treatment, the objective is to suppress the virus to a point that it stops to cause disease. I think we need to be very clear that with current medicines, that suppression can be achieved, but the virus actually still remains in some of the tissues of the body. And therefore, the drugs are designed to maintain that suppression for as long as the patient is guided, and in many cases for life. Now, the question we are raising of exposure is very important. And this is why you will find that patients who are on antiretroviral treatment, they are not, even if we know they will be on treatment for 5 years, we don't give them medication for 5 years. We give them for shorter periods of time so that we keep replenishing with appropriately valid drugs so they don't expire on them. But also you have that contact to check how they are doing. And patients on HIV treatment undergo frequent tests. I'm sure you've all heard about the viral loads that has to be done. And that is done quite frequently. And this is the reason, because they are on this medication for a long time, even when they have recovered well initially, the assumption is not that they'll continue to do well on those drugs. It's to keep checking so that in the event that there is any evidence that the viruses which we are going down have started to go up, then there are questions that will be asked. Has this patient been taking the medication accordingly? If they've been taking the medication, are we now having resistance to that medication? And that's why the clinicians, again, are very critical, because they have treatment guidelines for when to change from first line to second line and third line, precisely for the reason that we're discussing. And this is quite common in the space of HIV treatment. But I want to say that the medications are so engineered to be taken for a long period of time. So they've been developed and tested and shown to be safe, taken for a long period of time. Indeed, there are other drugs that may have the effect, but because taken over a period of time, they might bring some toxicity to the patient, and those are not given as such. So it is very important for patients on HIV treatment to make sure that, in fact, if there's a place where this conversation is important, it is in that space, because they may not know when the virus has become resistant, and then they will get a reoccurrence of symptoms and problems, and we don't want that. The problem with HIV, again, is that if the virus becomes resistant, and as you know how the virus is transmitted, the risk that a person who has a virus that has become resistant to a drug passes on to another person and another person and another person, the build-up effect is that these people may be put on the same medication to which the virus is already becoming resistant. And this is why it is very, very important for patients to make sure that they continue to go for their checkups to be sure that they the virus is still susceptible. But also that the patient is developing signs of toxicity from exposure to the drugs. That's why they always check on their liver, their kidney function, and other tests that are done. And I hope that this helps clarify to many patients who might wonder why do I have to keep doing this even when I'm feeling okay.
Thank you so much, Professor. I think that is very important and clear. I think one person have the response from us now. DG
Thank you so much for the questions that have been posed. I'll tackle one to do with how much are we doing in terms of sensitizing or trying to have issues of resistance reduced. From the part of the authority in terms of ZNPHI, we have been sensitizing members of the public, I think through radio, TV. Sometimes we gather people that are into operating these facilities that we call health shops, agro-veterinary shops and so forth. So for agro-veterinary shops, basically they're designated to sell medicines for veterinary use for animals, in short. So we've got class 1, class 2, class 3, class 3 and 2. There's a range of medicine that is prescribed and how they're supposed to how they're supposed to sell them to members of the public out there. So for those that have been running illegal outlets that are not registered, we've been having meetings with them and almost throughout the country to educate them on what needs to be put in place so that they can follow the laws and have proper personnel in place to help them sell those medicines. Some of them are not trained personnel. So that's one of them. And this activity is essential and will continue, especially also in the line of antimicrobial resistance. It's an activity that we intend to embark on, I think, in the course of next year, also going forward. And this is an issue that is not just tackled by one sector alone. It has to be in a holistic manner. Like the Ministry of Fisheries and Livestock have to be involved, element. Environment have to be involved. We talk of the health, of course, at the center of it have to be involved, and others, of course, that have impact in regards with antimicrobial resistance. So there's an issue where one mentioned the challenges. Of course, we do have challenges. We do not have sufficient resources to go around in terms of carrying some of the issues that are happening around within the country as far as sale of medicines is concerned. So in our guidance at the SI, it provides what needs to be in place. So we have people that are qualified, that are more or less supposed to be the eyes of the regulator because they are trained and they know what the law provides in terms of how they're supposed to. So from the ethical point of view, I think relevant professional bodies will have to come in terms of assisting the matter. And then also for the owners of these facilities that are registered, they have to ensure that they comply with the law. So what we are doing in terms of strategies now is to employ more staff, not directly as such. We may have full-time staff, but we're also looking at extending to other institutions, maybe Ministry of Livestock and Fisheries, maybe Ministry of the Health, because these are all over and centralized. So we work with them, train them. We have a program where we are scheduled to have train part-time inspectors. So these will help us and improve on the enforcement aspects. And then we'll continue, I think, speaking out, just encouraging people to comply with what the law provides. And of course, for those that are flouting the law, we will not hesitate to take them to the courts of law for prosecution so that they will stop and others will learn from the prosecutions that are going on and are leading to conviction, eventually giving a fine to people that are convicted.
That question goes to Dr. Muka.
State officers. Yeah, for all the pets in the country. Yeah, one thing we need to appreciate the structure of the veterinary services is that we have the smallest unit, which we call the veterinary town. And this is where we have our people who live amongst the community, even down to the village level. These are trained personnel to handle livestock, animal diseases, so to say. Because there is a difference between livestock and animal. Because an animal is general, livestock is farm animal. So we have this kind of staff that live with the people, and they're supposed to serve the community at that level. Yes, we might not have 100% staffing levels in these camps, but I think we are currently operating at about 85% of staff. And therefore, the majority of the areas are served, and therefore, I think they're quite taken care of. I think what we just need to inculcate in our people, as we've delivered here, is to have the people have a sense of responsibility of who am I supposed to see when I have a problem. They need to identify these people and visit them for the services that we need. In all the 116 districts in this country, we have veterinary officers. There are a few of them, of course, that are not managed. And therefore, from district level to the village level, and then to the provincial level, and to the national level, we have quite a number of layers of staff that are dedicated to these matters. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll ask another round of questions. But before I do that, Professor Chilengi, we was speaking about, how many drugs, do we have a list of drugs somewhere which we know, are listed on those organisms that are resistant to? Are we able to count? Are we able to list? Or are we able to just give an indication?
Some technically tricky question, that one. So the work that Dr. Lukwesa and others in the audience do is the surveillance to track to what extent are these drugs working, and are we having signals of resistance at what level against which drug for which condition. So I think on a forum like this, it would be dangerous to issue a statement that this drug it would be wrong, because the drugs generally are developed and licensed to use for a class of conditions. So you might find one drug is resistant to a given pathogen, but is still sensitive to another germ, and therefore clinically useful for this particular condition, but not useful for this condition. And this is why we are insisting that these conditions must be treated with prescription, because the prescribing officer must be privy to this information. Now, I think talking about antimicrobial resistance is already complicated at community level. So if we are now start going to this drug, it becomes a little difficult. Some of the drugs which we understand are being tracked, they are already showing resistance, bad resistance to some conditions, but they are useful for other conditions. And therefore, we don't want to send a mixed message here. And maybe I'll ask Dr. Lukwesa in the audience to comment on this. May I ask Dr. Lukwesa to comment on that?
Dr. Lukwesa, please.
Thank you. I don't know why this does not to comment. Yes. So as a country, we are tracking some infections against different antibiotics. And this infection, this data is very, very useful. Just at patient level, as we send our samples to the laboratory, individual patients will receive individual results, and the clinician will base the treatment on that individual patient. But we also aggregate this data so that we get a general picture on what antibiotics are working
for which conditions. Like the DG has already mentioned, we've recorded quite high resistance in some conditions, some drugs causing certain conditions. But these same drugs, the resistance is low for certain other conditions. So we are doing some monitoring and we'll continue to do some monitoring. The TB programs are monitoring resistance against TB. HIV is being monitored, and then we are monitoring other organisms which are causing other diseases as a country. So this information is very useful for practice and also for the decision makers. So we continue to monitor and we continue to review the results. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that important answer. So I think all in all, what is being said is that one antibiotic can be useful in a certain condition and not useful in another condition. And so if we list it out there and it's prescribed to somebody for where it's useful, they may say, no, but I heard that this drug is resistant and so on. I saw two other hands lifted. Do we still have questions or have you answered? Mr. Ahmed? And okay, that's 3 questions.
Thank you so much. My name is Mine is not a question, but a comment. First of all, just to appreciate you, experts like us, ZNPHI, for this wonderful thing. I've been taking medicine for the past 7 years, and I'm learning what antibiotics are and so forth and so on, how to get rid of medicines. So I'm just imagining my brothers and sisters who are here. So just try to make a comment that we are here as an organization for interpreters. We are willing to collaborate and work together so that as you reach out to the community to sensitize them through different media, we work together to help the people for this very important information. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. There was another question behind. That was a comment, and I think you can see the
Good morning. My name is Rose Shunga from Media of Zambia. My first question is, I heard that exposing or disposing of drugs probably suggested can be given to pharmacists that they can dispose them in a better way. But how sure are we that if we give the pharmacists these drugs, they won't be able to resell them? And two, I've seen a practice home in many homes where you find that people are using Panadol or Cadmo to clean their pressing iron, make the iron hot, then they use it to clean it. Is that safe as well?
There's another question here. Okay, we have these 2 questions, and then we can have the final answer. Okay. My name is Christina from CSP Press. The doctor had mentioned that antibiotics can only be administered by the qualified medical personnel. But then I'm thinking, how can we help somebody who's living in the remotest parts of the country, for example, far from the hospital, and are so much in pain? Do they need to take any antibiotic? Because you're saying only when you are examined by qualified personnel that you can. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Mohamed from Zambia. My question is based on if someone maybe is misusing drugs, and so as a result they became resistant to some disease, and it can be transmitted to another person. Even that person, does it mean the disease will also be resistant to the medicine, or it can be treated? And also, just to add to the question that's asked, we also seen some use to be not dependent, amoxicillin, I mean, ZNPHI, they will pound, they will try to crush it and add in lotion to get rid of their pimples or anything of their distance. Does not have any effect also.
Thank you very much. I'm really excited about this engagement because it's bringing out real issues from the community. And so, my table of experts, I'll start with the DDC member here to comment on related questions.
Okay, I think they are quite interesting questions in the blog. Maybe to talk about, I'll start with the one on disposal of medicines. That how sure are we that if we take these medicines to the nearest health facility or the community pharmacy, that the people that we give to not use them? It's a very difficult question to answer. But what you should know is that these people are trained and also trained with ethics. It's unethical for anyone to get those medicines that are intent and use them. So in the circles of pharmaceutical industry, it's not, even at hospital level, when medicines go out, they are returned. The person who's going to receive them is not assured of the quality. So the question you should ask yourself, how were these medicines handled the time they were out there and the person who had them? So look at storage conditions. How were they handled? So it's questionable in terms of the quality. So a number of those people, especially those that work in pharmacies, aware about this issue that medicines that are returned, so if they were being used and then they are returned, they're not supposed to use them. Or put them back as part of stock, especially if they're in smaller quantities. Put them back and they're part of stock that can be used at a later stage. We will not encourage that. So to provide that assurance may be difficult, but we ride on the assurance that those people that you are giving to will be able to do the right thing. And more so, whatever medicines they have, we need to make sure that we keep the records of what they have, including those that are expired. Then the use of aspirin.
Sorry, just a quick one. So when you talk about the pharmacies where we take these drugs, drugs, or whatever, does it apply to both private and public pharmacies, or is that specific to public pharmacies?
It could be both. Whatever facility is there, it's to be. So that facility is sort of giving back to the owners of the public in terms of it's a service, so to say. So we've taken oath in terms of showing that the interest of the public comes first before any other interest. So if people are following those, it shouldn't be a big issue. But we endeavor to sensitize the health facilities and the community pharmacies that in case the person returns medicines that are used before, or somebody that died or they expired, they take them so that they are properly disposed of using the system that has been put in place. I hope I've clarified.
Several questions here relating to practice. I think I'll try and tackle Panadol for cleaning, pressing iron, and ZNPHI for the face. So the reason we are creating and insisting on this awareness is so that people use medicines for the purpose for which the medicines are developed and prescribed. So I think it goes without saying as to whether it is appropriate to use ZNPHI crushed and put in lotion. I mean, as a scientist, I can understand that sometimes people have pimples which are caused by bacteria, and if you directly expose those to an antibiotic, maybe it will work. The problem is that the drug you are using, by design, is meant to be swallowed, digested, broken down, then the active ingredients taken in the bloodstream and then it works from there to clear whether it's pimples or wherever the seat of infection is. And the dosage is calculated to work at that level. Now, if you are going to directly put in your lotion, how much are you putting? And then secondly, and some of these drugs, by the way, the active ingredients may not be active as a tablet. It's only when you've swallowed and it gets past the stomach that it gets activated to work. So some of these practices, it's actually difficult to comment on because we understand this is not the way the drug has been licensed to be used. And so what toxic or side effects you may get from that practice, we have no idea because we only understand the side effects when it is used according to the way it has been developed and registered for public use. So it's a bit difficult. Problem of remote patients who may be in a crisis. I want to say that the way the health system there is a tertiary care facility, primary, secondary, tertiary, meaning the levels of specialization and availability of service varies depending on the level at which you get. So the very basic structure in the rural place will be called the health post. And the people you find there, they are trained really to deal with very basic emergencies and identify life-threatening conditions and recommend to pass to the next level. So at that level, they might have some pain relief medication, some very basic things. And sometimes we get even community health workers who are not formally trained in the medical training, but they are trained through short courses and trainings to basically equip them to do the basic things. So at that level, they will identify and give very basic, maybe pain relief or whatever, and pass to the next level. So typically, certain drugs will not even be available at that level. And where the appropriately qualified person to prescribe is not available, those medicines will not be at that level. And so if the condition of the patient is such that they require higher level care, that's why there's a whole referral system. And there are some medicines, even where you have doctors, like some of the very specialized medicines, anti-cancer drugs, for example, you will not find them even in a hospital in Chongwe. You have to go to the cancer hospital because the specialization and the specifically qualified individuals are found at that level. So that's how the system is designed to work. The last question is around transmissibility of resistant germs. So drug resistance is a property of the germ, not the person. Remember, we give the medicine in order to kill the germs. So it's the germs which become resistant to the drug. So if such a resistant germ in patient X is passed to patient Y, so they are passing on a germ that is already resistant. Meaning, if this person takes the same medication where in the other person it's not working, it will not work also in this person, assuming they are taking the correct concentration and the correct dosage. Okay, so it's a property of the germs, and this is why it is very difficult. And this is why we are saying, let us manage this, because when you have resistant bugs, they move around and they cause a problem generally. I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, an additional.
Not to basically go on what Prof has indicated there, but just additions in terms of disposal as well. You can bring some officers, those of you that know where we are located. We are doing so We are the copper products in Dola, Solwezi, Chipata, and the border areas like Konde, Livingston as well. Somewhere there you will find us. So you can be able to go to the facility. Then on the part of enforcement, how long have you been working on as an institution? We've been working with Zambia Revenue Authority, working with Zambia Police Drug Enforcement Commission, just to leverage on the resources in terms of human power when it comes to enforcement of activities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think this has really been exciting and we'd love to go on and go on, but I know that our team of experts here have other engagements we've actually encroached into their next schedules. But just before we conclude, the issue of hand sanitizers and antimicrobial soaps, I've seen some hand soaps retaining antiseptic, antimicrobial, and so on and so forth. So this use of even the hand sanitizers and so on, what is the implication in terms of the health of the people, but also in terms of, does it have any impact on the issue we're discussing today on causing resistance?
Thank you very much. I think that's another important question. So, hand sanitizers do have chemicals that kill germs, okay? And they are designed to work as such. When you have germs on your hands and you use a sanitizer, they will kill the germs on your hands. That's how they are designed. But of course, that introduces a whole set of discussion on having. Is it of the correct quality? Is the chemical stored correctly such that by the time you use it, it will do that? And with continued use, you also, just like drugs, you also need to continue checking that the chemicals in your hand sanitizers do what you expect to do. At some point, there is theoretically a chance that hand sanitizers, which were very effective clearing bag X, stop doing that because the bags have become clever and escaping it. So the issue of research and surveillance is one that must go on in every sphere, whether it's with medicines that we drink, medicines that we use to spray the house, or medicines that we use to sanitize our hands. So that concept is applicable there.
Thank you so much, Professor.
So just to add on to what Professor stated, from the regulatory point of view, when there was the onset of COVID-19 pandemic, there were a lot of people that were coming on board with all sorts of formulation and sanitizer. So what we did, we came up with standards that guided how these are supposed to be formulated and what concentration of the active ingredients. So some of them that we analyzed, we found that far below the concentration that is recommended. What Prof is saying, we find that some of the microorganisms, the germs, will stop being susceptible to that agent that you're using to clean. So we have been sampling and testing just to make sure that these are up to standard. And then in the hospitals, when it comes to disinfectants, those things that they use, the liquid that they use to clean the floors, the surfaces, and so forth, there's a policy that after every maybe 1 week or 2 weeks, we change, we don't use the same. That is basically to avoid resistance developing. We do that when we inspect the factories that manufacture medicines, so that the environment in which these medicines are manufactured is okay, it's acceptable. So they change the type of disinfectant that they are using. So we normally monitor and also check what type, what concentration they're using, and so forth. And then tests are done to monitor the effectiveness of those disinfectants, including these antiseptics. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think this has been a very fruitful time, and I hope that it has opened up your minds and given you some areas of focus which you can follow through and ensure that you bridge the gap in the community and everybody is aware about issues surrounding antimicrobial resistance. I hope that you are all registered, and we will be inviting you to other such events to talk about other issues of public health concern, so that together we can manage to help drive the prevention of disease. So as I come to the end, as moderator, I would like to pass on the mic to our national coordinator, Dr. Tizimu, to give concluding remarks and close the session. Dr. Tizimu, please.
Thank you very much, moderator. And please, may we clap for our panelists. Yeah, so thank you everyone for coming and for your time. And I guess we have learned a lot for this session. And we are looking forward to also a program where we can call the journalists so that we discuss more and orient you more of these activities that we social resistance. So that as you communicate to the public, you have that information which can be delivered to and also. With these few remarks, allow me to officially close. Thank you very much.
About drug resistance communication. Short translation.